Never let ego speak louder than kindness. Maybe a part of you is searching for peace. If so, subscribe to Buddha Pray and watch this video until the end, because every day there are stories here just for your soul. Let me ask you something. Have you ever won an argument but lost someone you truly loved? Have you ever been so focused on being right that you forgot to be kind? Sometimes the loudest voice in the room isn't the one that holds the truth. It's the one carried by ego. And ego doesn't care about love. It doesn't care about connection. It only cares about being louder. But what if, just once, you let kindness speak first? Today, I want to share a story with you. A story that may sound simple, but touches something deep. A story that will remind you that kindness is not weakness. It is strength in its purest form. If there's someone you love, someone you haven't spoken to in a while, someone you used to argue with, don't scroll, don't skip, because this story might just change the way you speak to them before it's too late. There was once a quiet village tucked between hills and whispers of wind, where an old retired teacher named Ethan lived alone. His home was small, made of worn wood and old memories, but it was filled with warmth, the kind that doesn't come from sunlight, but from years of silent love. Ethan had one son. His name was Noah. Noah had grown up in that little village, but now he lived far away, in a city of glass towers and noise. He was smart, brilliant even, a successful executive in a tech company. His schedule was always full, his calendar planned down to the minute, and his heart. His heart was buried somewhere between meetings and deadlines. When Noah's mother passed away, he missed the funeral. He said the flight was delayed. He said there was an emergency at work. But in truth, he was afraid of slowing down, of facing things that could not be solved with logic. His father, Ethan, never said a word about it. He simply folded his grief, like an old sweater, and placed it on a shelf in his heart. Years passed. Ethan grew older, slower, lonelier, and every evening he would sit by the window stitching old shirts. One in particular, Noah's childhood shirt, a blue one with faded buttons and torn elbows. Ethan repaired it gently again and again, even though no one would wear it anymore. To him, sewing that shirt was like sewing a memory that refused to die. Sometimes he would whisper to himself, "Still smells like him." Noah called every few months. The calls were short, efficient. "Hey Dad, I'm good, just busy. Talk later." Ethan always smiled, even when the silence on the other end felt colder than winter. One morning, Ethan didn't wake up. The neighbor found him sitting in his chair, peaceful, holding that same blue shirt on his lap. Noah flew back for the funeral. This time, he was on time. He wore a black suit, expensive shoes, and sunglasses that hid more than just his eyes. The ceremony was simple. A few villagers, some students who had once been taught by Ethan, and a small box that held his remaining belongings. Inside the box was a letter, and that shirt. Noah didn't remember it at first. He touched the fabric, confused. Then something cracked. The smell, the stitching, the initials, his. He unfolded the letter with trembling hands. It read, "My dearest Noah, I know you've made it far in life. I've watched from a distance, always proud. You've built something powerful, something strong. But son, sometimes strength is not in how much you can say, but in what you choose not to say. Sometimes winning an argument is far less important than keeping someone close. Ego is loud, Noah, but love whispers. Don't let the noise of the world drown the soft voice inside you. And please, forgive me if I ever made you feel like you had to be perfect. You never had to be perfect. You just had to be present. Love, Dad." Noah clutched the letter, and then the shirt, and then something inside him shattered. For the first time in years, he cried. not because his father had died, but because he had let their love die long before his father ever left this world. That day, he sat alone in the wooden house. He didn't make a call, didn't check his email, didn't post on social media. He just sat there holding a shirt, reading a letter, and realizing that sometimes the most painful thing isn't losing someone. It's realizing you were never truly with them while they were still here. In the teachings of the Buddha, there is one silent root that causes so much suffering: ego. The self, the I, the illusion that we are separate, that we must defend, fight, prove at all costs. It whispers to us saying, "You're right, don't back down, don't let them win." But what if, in the process of winning, we lose something far more precious? The Buddha once said, "Holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned." Ego is like that hot coal. It heats up with every word unspoken, every apology withheld, every moment we choose pride over presence. In the Dhammapada, verse 5, the Buddha teaches, hatred is never appeased by hatred. Hatred is only appeased by love. This is an eternal truth. But love cannot exist where ego rules. Love needs space. Love needs softness. Love needs a heart that is willing to bend, to lower itself. Not in defeat, but in deep wisdom. You see, when Noah missed his mother's funeral, he thought time would fix it. When he spoke to his father in cold, calculated words, he thought success would excuse the distance. He didn't realize that in Buddhism, presence is more powerful than perfection. The Buddha emphasized right speech as part of the Noble Eightfold Path. Right speech is not just about avoiding lies or gossip. It's about using words that heal, words that bring connection, words that allow the other person to feel seen, heard, and loved. Have you ever hurt someone, not by what you said, but by what you didn't say, by the cold silence in your voice? By the way you avoided a hug, a call, a look? That too is ego. Ego is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet. Sometimes it hides in the polite phrases like, "I'm busy," or "it's complicated." But what it's really saying is, "I don't want to be vulnerable." In Buddhist practice, humility is not weakness. It's a doorway to compassion, a doorway to peace. In the Sigalovada Sutta, often referred to as the layperson's code of conduct, the Buddha outlines the duties of a child toward their parents. One of the key principles is to support them, to care for them in their old age, to continue the family legacy, and to honor them after death. But how many children forget this? Not out of malice, but out of distraction, out of ambition, out of the hunger to be someone in the eyes of the world, while becoming no one in the eyes of those who loved them most. Noah's father didn't ask for much. He didn't demand expensive gifts or long phone calls. He only wanted his son's presence, his son's attention, his son's heart. And so many of us have someone in our lives who is just like Ethan. They don't say it out loud, they won't complain, but they are waiting for us to speak softer, to put down our phones, to choose love over logic, to come back home, not to a place, but to a person. In Buddhist philosophy, coming home doesn't always mean traveling. It means returning to the heart, to the place inside us that remembers how to care, how to forgive, how to speak with warmth. So let me ask you truthfully, when was the last time you let kindness lead? When was the last time you said, "I was wrong, I miss you. I'm sorry I let distance grow between us"? Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is be the first to bend, because in the stillness of that humility, peace begins. And in the end, as the Buddha taught, it is not the clever who are remembered, it is the compassionate. If you've stayed with this story until now, I want to say something from the heart. Thank you, because somewhere inside you, there is a part that still believes in softness, in second chances, in love that doesn't shout but whispers. I'm still here. Maybe this story reminded you of someone you love, someone you haven't called in a while, someone you argued with, someone you lost, not to death but to distance. If that person is still alive, then you are lucky because you still have time. Time to make one phone call. Time to write one message. Time to say 3 simple words. I'm sorry. Maybe it wasn't your fault. Maybe they were the ones who hurt you. Maybe you're still waiting for them to say it first. But what if they're waiting too? What if both of you are standing in silence, hoping the other breaks it? Let me tell you this. Pride never builds bridges. Kindness does. Pride waits. Kindness acts. So be the one who acts. Call your mother. Visit your father. Send that friend a message. Tell your partner, let's try again. Say what your heart has been holding for too long. Don't let ego bury it in silence, because tomorrow is never promised. And some stories end too soon. Some goodbyes come without warning. And when that day comes, all you'll wish for is one more chance, one more dinner, one more walk, one more I love you said out loud. But don't wait until it's too late. You see, when Noah held that shirt, when he read that letter, he would have traded all his success, all his money, all his logic, just for one more evening, sitting with his father, saying nothing at all, just being there. Sometimes being there is enough. Sometimes it's everything. So right now, I ask you, who are you going to reach out to today? Who do you need to forgive? Who needs to hear that you still care? Don't wait for the perfect moment. There isn't one. There is only now. Right here, right now. Choose presence over perfection. Choose connection over correctness. Choose love over ego, because when the curtain falls, what remains is not what we won, but who we were kind to and who we loved, despite the arguments, the mistakes, the distance. So please, do one thing today, a simple act of kindness, a soft word, a silent hug, a text that says, I was thinking of you. You never know what that could heal. You never know what pain it could end. You never know what heart it could save, maybe even your own. This world is loud, full of noise, full of pride, but you can be different. You can be the quiet voice that reminds someone they are not alone. You can be the reason someone believes in goodness again. You can be the reason someone cries, not from pain, but from feeling loved. So go, start now, not tomorrow. And when you do, come back here. Tell me in the comments, who did you forgive today? Who did you reach out to? Let this not be just a story. Let this be your turning point, because stories can end, but kindness echoes forever.